Well, the UN's nuclear watchdog says the protective shell covering the Chernobyl nuclear plant has lost its primary safety functions after a drone strike in February. When it happened, Ukraine blamed Russia for targeting the reactor, but the Kremlin denied the claim. So is there cause for concern? Robert Kelley is a nuclear engineer and is with the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. And he joins us now. Robert, good to have you back on the show. Now, firstly, how concerning is it that this protective shell that's over the Chernobyl nuclear reactor can no longer perform its function, the main function, that is to block radiation, according to what the IAEA says?
It's not really a particular problem. I think it highlights the fact that targeting facilities in time of war, nuclear facilities, is a bad idea. This is not a reactor, of course. This is the remains of a reactor that blew up back in 1986. So what you're dealing with is the radioactive waste and junk that's underneath. They built a building over the site of this former reactor. It's probably the biggest Quonset hut you've ever seen, bigger than any aircraft hangar you've ever seen. Yeah. It's an enormous building. It's made of steel and it covers up the old reactor and also an old containment that was there before. So the hole that was left by the drone is a few meters in diameter. It means that some gamma radiation can shine out into the air, but gamma radiation is just like shining a bright light at someone. If you're not in the beam, it doesn't make any difference. So the real thing would be, it's there to contain particles of radioactive dust. That's what's there. Now the question would be, can it get out?
So that is the next question. Can it get out? And would it have the propensity in the future to be a public health concern?
I think the answer is completely no. It's not going to be a public health concern. You can see pictures of people standing on the roof of this Quonset hut type building, looking at the hole. You can see they're not in great danger. They're not wearing respiratory protection gear. They're not carrying supplied air. They're just looking at the hole, which they're going to have to put a patch over. Now, why would anything that's inside the building get out anyway? Rain will go in. The wind isn't going to go into a hole that's a few meters in diameter. The biggest problem is probably birds and animals. If they can go through that hole, birds would become somewhat contaminated. They might fly a kilometer or two. That isn't going to be any threat to the world. And it won't be a threat because nobody lives within a kilometer of it anyway.
Of course, the question is, why Russia, targets or possibly targets something like the Chernobyl plant. It is, the site of the worst nuclear disaster in history. Can it, and the other question is, can it sustain, a similar drone strike as what happened in February?
I think it could survive a number of strikes like that, because, as I pointed out, there really isn't any mechanism for the particulate dust that's radioactive to get out of the building anyway. I also think we don't have firm evidence that it was the Russians who targeted it. That's what the Ukrainians say, but somebody shot a drone at it, and I don't know who it was. So I don't want to be on the record as blaming the Russians.
And can you describe to us what are the fixes that needs to be done and how careful an operation it needs to be to patch up that hole that we've been seeing?
I think any confident roofer who can roof a steel building, a warehouse in an industrial district, can go in there and do it in a very short time. And as I say, you can see people on the roof with no respiratory protection at all, and they're not worried about the gamma radiation coming up. Granted, you don't want to stay there for hours, but the process of plugging that hole is not that difficult. And people worked on that in that general area 40 years ago when the reactor blew up, and they were subjected to far more radiation. So I don't think it's going to be a big deal. But no, they shouldn't be shooting at nuclear facilities, no matter who's shooting, and it's not a good idea. In this case, it's not a threat to the public at large.
Yep. And as the war goes on, Robert, the IAEA also says that the nuclear plant in Zaporizhzhia that's now under Russia's control had lost power but temporarily overnight. Is that a serious development, considering that it does require power to keep the nuclear material cool and to avoid a meltdown?
I haven't seen that particular report. There are emergency generators, I think 24 of them at the site. If they lost all of those generators, that would be a bad thing. So far, I haven't heard of them losing everything all at once. The problem is if they lose power from outside sources, like from a coal burning plant nearby or something, then yes, you want to keep it cool. Now, the plant's been shut down for about 3 years now. It still requires cooling, but not nearly as much as when it was first shut down.
Okay, Robert Kelley, really good to get your expertise on this. Thank you so much.
Nice to be with you.